Hi, I'm Taylor Haase and Danny Shirey. We are coming to you from PPG Paints Arena, where the Penguins just played their third preseason game of the exhibition season. This is the first one where they used, it looked a lot like an NHL lineup. And I think, a lot of us coming into this, we thought it would be a blowout, given they're using their NHL regulars. Detroit looked a whole lot more like the Grand Rapids Griffins with the lineup they were using. Was a lot of AHL guys. Was kind of a blowout, just not the way we expected. Penguins lost 6-2. Danny, just what can we take away from a game like this?
It's so tough, and this was something that we were asking the players and Mike Sullivan as well. It's like, obviously this performance, the Red Wings were basically rostering their AHL lineup tonight. They had some of their guys from junior in there. That I went through their lineup and I counted maybe 8 passable NHL skaters. So the fact that the Penguins lost by over 4 goals with a lineup that pretty much could be, considering some injuries that are inevitable, this could be a lineup that we could see here during the regular season. So, we're asking the players, how do you move on from this game without dwelling on it, but at the same time recognize that there's stuff to improve on? And this group's got great leadership, and I think these guys all know that they don't need to necessarily overreact to anything, but in the back of their head they also realize that there is a lot of things to work on and that they can get back to work on those things. So it's obviously tough to see a loss like that, but Mike Sullivan even said he's reluctant to overreact to such a performance.
Yeah, it's not like any individuals stood out as being awful. It was just like they were just discombobulated, which makes sense because
I think that's like the perfect adjective for it. They just were almost lethargic too. There was just very low energy, not a lot of cohesion, and I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and I mean, this group of players, they really haven't had much practice time together throughout camp. Like they have been working with, like Crosby and Genselman with Pusten, and they really haven't had any practice with this. The power play, I don't know what the final numbers ended up being, but it was something like 0 for 20, it felt like.
Yeah, the Penguins had 7 or 8 power plays. A couple of those were shortened power plays, but they were just a mess throughout the...
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, even though they were a mess, they're just so talented that they still had a couple of good looks here and there, and, maybe if a couple of those bounces went their way, we're having a different conversation right now. But at the end of the day, you want your superstars and several of your future Hall of Famers to be able to put the puck in the back of the net against a bunch of AHL guys.
Yeah, and like same thing, this power play, they haven't had any practice time together during camp. Obviously, they're using the same first unit. They've played together for years, but they haven't had any time together in camp other than the morning skate. You just can't put a whole lot of stock into something like this. No one really stood out as being looking very good or looking very bad. They just weren't cohesive, and I guess that's to be expected when you're dressing a lineup like this for the first time. They do have 3 more exhibition games left. If they look like this again, then I guess maybe a little bit concerned, but again, not really.
Yeah, I mean, if they go into, if they play the Red Wings again and they play the Sabres as well to wrap up the preseason, if we see another stinker like this, and the other thing to keep in mind too is training camp and the preseason goes along, teams are starting to trim their rosters. So as time goes on, we're going to see more and more, actual NHL lineups. I don't think we're going to see, necessarily any full NHL lineups like the Penguins necessarily put out tonight. But as time goes on, we'll have a better gauge, and maybe some of these guys, nobody's going to say it, but it's tough to get up for games like these. Mike Sullivan even alluded to that and was like, look, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and he didn't call any of them out by name, but he essentially alluded to the fact that these guys have done this 17 times together, and it's tough to get up for a game going against AHL guys and guys that are coming out of junior and are on their way back to junior. So looking forward, if there's another performance like this against another lineup that's more NHL caliber, then that might be more cause for concern. But as for now, we can just chalk this one up to a stinker.
Yeah, what he said was the veteran players know what they need to get ready for this season. Just a quick injury update to touch on for people that weren't aware. So really the only regulars they were missing from this, Jeff Carter, day-to-day upper body injury, Kasperi Kapanen. He was supposed to be in this game, then he wasn't feeling well, so they held him out. Radim Zohorna, I think, got in over him, but hopefully we'll get a chance to see them and a look at like a real NHL lineup in one of these last preseason games. But Back to practice tomorrow. We'll have your coverage of that and the rest of the preseason over at DK Pittsburgh Sports, so stay tuned for that.